Hi everybody, today we want to talk about masturbation, sometimes referred to as self-abuse. I think that's a more appropriate and helpful term. Thomas Aquinas even refers to it in the Summa Theologiae as effeminacy, which is that vice which makes us soft, a sort of inability to persevere in what we ought to persevere in because we find it too difficult. But we'll look at what C.S. Lewis has to say about masturbation today, because I find just this little excerpt from a letter he wrote very, very helpful, and I think you will too. I want to let you know too that I wrote a whole book on pornography called The Porn Myth. I spent about 3 or 4 years researching and writing it. It came out several years ago now, but I'm really proud of it. 100% of the royalties go to help sex traffic victims in San Diego. So if you buy the book off Amazon or Ignatius Press published it, or even on Audible, I don't make a cent from the book. That's not why I'm pushing it. But I think it is a really good book. It's a non-religious response to pro-porn arguments. And in it, I have a whole chapter dedicated to masturbation and debunking the claim that masturbation is overall healthy, especially for males, which is something I know people hear a lot. So if you want to go get The Porn Myth, you can go. I'll put a link below. But let's look at what C.S. Lewis had to say about masturbation. He says this: "For me, the real evil of masturbation would be that it takes an appetite which, in lawful use, leads the individual out of himself to complete and correct his own personality in that of another, and finally in children and even grandchildren, and turns it back, sends the man back into the prison of himself, there to keep a harem of imaginary brides. And this harem, once admitted, works against his ever getting out and really uniting with a real woman." This bit is so powerful. Listen to this. He says, "The harem is always accessible, always subservient, calls for no sacrifices or adjustments, and can be endowed with erotic and psychological attractions which no real woman can rival." Let's just stop there for a moment. You know, in your sexual fantasies, it's not as if the woman was not really in the mood, or, you know, perhaps was in pain and couldn't make love, or perhaps was out and about and had other things to do that were important, tending to the children or things like that. No, she's always accessible. She's always subservient. She doesn't demand anything of you. You are as God to her, as it were. And so this is awful. And the other thing too is, I think when people masturbate, if they're having imaginings, it's often of different men or different women. And so you've got, as he says, a harem. There's a group of people. And the idea that I can encounter a real flesh and blood man or woman that can compete with this, this selfish imagining is not going to happen. So no mortification is ever imposed on your vanity, right? This is the line that just crushed me the first time I read it. When it comes to masturbation, right, and our fantasies, he says, in the end, they, the harem, become merely the medium through which he increasingly adores himself. And we should be able to see that somebody who adores themselves is an awful person to be around, right? Not self-sacrificing, not humble, not considerate, not somebody who anticipates the needs of their lover. They become selfish, and selfishness is always ugly. It says, "And it is not only the faculty of love which is sterilized, forced back on itself, but also the faculty of imagination. The true exercise of imagination, in my view, is A, to help us to understand other people, and B, to respond to, and some of us, to produce art. But it has also a bad use, to provide for us in shadowy form a substitute of virtues, successes, distinctions, which ought to be sought outside in the real world, e.g., picturing all I'd do if I were rich, instead of earning and saving." Wow, that's very good. You know, I remember when I was a kid, I would put on a record or a CD or something, and I would imagine myself singing it, and there being people in the audience who were just admiring me and thinking great things of me because of how talented I am. And this is sort of the same thing. Like the same criticism of masturbation is the similar criticism to this, although masturbation's worse, because I would say it's worse because it's a perversion of the sexual faculty, which seems to be of more importance given how it's connected to the procreation of the species and myself fully giving to another person, etc. But yeah, I just thought I'd humble myself there and share that little fantasy I had as a kid. But that's really cool, man. Yeah. So yeah, that's the example he uses. Like, you just sit back and imagine all that you do if you were rich, but like you could actually save, you could actually earn. He concludes by saying masturbation involves this abuse of imagination in erotic matters, which I think bad in itself, right? That was my point. And thereby encourages a similar abuse of it in all spheres. After all, almost the main work of life is to come out of ourselves, out of the little dark prison we are all born in. Masturbation is to be avoided, as all things are to be avoided which retard this process. The danger is that of coming to love the prison. Isn't that sensational? So masturbation, is a grave sin, and it's something we should absolutely seek to root out of our life. It's not acceptable, and yet someone might say, well, isn't it better to masturbate than to masturbate to pornography? But this is an unhelpful question, because yes, it is, right? That's the answer. But that in no way legitimizes masturbation, nor does it make it healthy. Saying masturbating without pornography is less bad than masturbating to pornography is like saying smoking a carton of cigarettes a day is less bad than smoking 3 cartons of cigarettes a day. Therefore, it's healthy. No, you wouldn't conclude that. Masturbation isn't healthy, and it absolutely is to be avoided. And if you're a Catholic, absolutely is something that you should be repenting of in the sacrament of confession. Now, if you are a man who struggles with lust or pornography or, some sort of sexual sin, I would point you to another thing that I've created. This is a free course. There's over 46,000 men who have gone through it or who are currently going through it. It's a 21-day porn detox that I've created. It's very well produced. As I say, you can be anonymous. Here's what some of the guys are saying. This person here, I feel totally awesome. It's been 21 days since I've looked at porn. For me, this is a huge accomplishment. This person says, I feel myself dying to my old ways and am responding completely differently to temptation. So I would point you to this if you're a man who's struggling with porn or lust, or if you know a man who's struggling with porn or lust. Go to strive21.com, strive21.com, and for 21 days you'll get videos from me, and we'll kind of go through this together. And it's not just an isolated experience. It's something you're doing with literally thousands of men from all around the world who you will be engaging with every day. So yeah, those are 2 things I'd point you to, strive21.com. And I'd encourage you to get my book, The Porn Myth, if you're interested in doing a deeper dive into this. And if you're somebody who's writing a paper, just think all of the footnotes are meticulous and ready for your plagiarizing convenience. I mean, there is about 30 or maybe more pages in the back of bibliography. So I've done a lot of research into this topic, and this book might be a help to you. It's also an Audible if you like that. Let me share a funny story with you before I go. I had what do you call them, an Audible publisher reach out to me, and they said, hey, we see that The Porn Myth is doing really well on Amazon. We'd like to make it an audiobook. Is that something you'd be interested in? And of course, if anyone out there has published a book, you realize that it's the publisher who has the control, not yourself. So I said, well, you'll have to ask them. And they did. Ignatius said yes. I reached out to this audio publisher and said, hey, I know that sometimes people like hearing the voice of the person, like who wrote it, the author's voice. They want to hear the author's voice. So perhaps I could read it. And they said, okay, well, yeah, why don't you record a sample and send it to us? And then if we like it, we'll use it. And I thought, well, that's pretty great. Let's do that. So I remember I was just laying on my bed, and I opened my laptop, and I went into GarageBand, and I as well as I could, I thought, recorded a lovely sentence, well, more a paragraph, I should say, or 2. I thought, well, that's pretty good. I'm pretty proud of that. That was good job, Matt. You sound terrific. Who wouldn't want you? So I sent it to them, and they were like, well, they said, yeah, nah, Yeah, nah. They gave me the old yeah, nah. The yeah, nah, yeah. Nah, nah. Yeah, nah, nah, nah. Yeah, nah. And they went with some English bloke, which is fine. I don't even care. So if you want to listen to the book and have an English... The nice thing about having an English guy read my book is I sound way smarter. The book sounds like way more sophisticated than if I was to read it. Rightio, now we're going to talk about... Anyway, that's the story I wanted to tell you. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, let me know what you think below.